I have an absolute clash of the Titans for this video today. Two of the biggest whales on the server fought for fun, sent me the reports so I can make a video about it. This video will also be a Kirun commander guide, since that'll be one of the commanders featured in the reports. Let's get into it. Alright, as always with these Commander Guide videos, we will start by taking a look at a report here. We have Care Bear versus IAMROB 20. Both of these guys gave me permission to use these reports. They fought twice, at least twice that Care Bear sent me. They both gave me permission to use the report, so huge shout out to both of them. I'm very grateful for them letting me use these. These guys are whaled out pretty much to the extreme. Almost fully refined gold gear on Care Bear's Kirun. Same situation on Rob's Khaldun, and I do believe that his Khaldun is Respect 25. And I might actually use it in the future to make a Khaldun video, as I think Khaldun is one of the strongest commanders in the game. In this first fight, we have Rune's T4 unit doing an absolutely ridiculous 200 and round up to 220,000 damage. In this fight, Rob was using a pure evil man lineup, bringing in some half trolls. We can actually take a look at the damage on his side. Not really that thrilling in terms of damage. For the second fight, he made some changes, and let me go ahead and pull that fight up. And you can see that with Reapers in the lineup, Rob actually ended up beating this Kirun. The Reapers pumping out 200,000 damage of their own. Reapers in Tactics Evolved are absolutely ridiculous because they give themselves a 50% chance to gain follow-up every single round. They already do incredible damage, and then in Tactics Evolved it just takes it to a whole new level. Since they have a built-in follow-up skill, that's like one of the best sources of extra damage in the game, is just getting those extra attacks off. So really, really cool fights to see. Rob did change up his gear very slightly. Since he swapped over to the Reapers, he ended up going for a superior halberd with melee vigor, as his gold item had resilience of evil men. Obviously, that's not going to affect the Reapers. He also changed his Cask of Pride. The one in the first video had the extra damage in the early rounds. That's not really going to help Reapers that much. He brought in melee suppression, presumably to help the Reapers get to the later rounds of combat. And he changed over to a gigantic hammer instead of a Sandclaw, because the Sandclaw would not give, if we pull that one up, it would not give the Reapers extra damage, as this only affects evil men. Alright, so those were the battle reports. Let's actually talk about the Kirun part of the video now. We'll take a look at Care Bear's equipment, talk about his skills and his items. He is using a gigantic hammer with Giant's Power. I think if you're not Rune, then you would probably want Rend or whatever it's called that ignores defense. Gigantic Hammer is just an absolutely excellent choice in general for any commander that requires their army to deal damage, because it has a massive +6 army attack. Huge amount of attack. He has a Great Plate of the East, giving his evil men extra HP. And he has Hazard Training, which is a super powerful effect in my opinion, because as I've mentioned in a lot of these videos, early rounds of combat are so important in this game. So surviving more in the early rounds is super helpful. Easterling Helm with Fortitude of Evil Men, and then Drums of Barad-dûr with Might of Soldiers. I think another good option here could be Iron Guard, I think it's called, the one that heals. Actually, Rob was using it in this fight, I believe. Yeah, Iron Guard, the one that recovers HP every single round for melee units, as you're pretty much always going to be running melee units on Kirun, because he's pretty much always going to be using evil men. So in terms of itemization for a commander like this, it's pretty straightforward. You want things that are going to boost your army's damage, because Kirun relies on his army to deal damage, and you want things that are going to buff evil men in general. So look for effects like Fortitude of Evil Men, or like a Sandclaw gives attack to evil men. That could be a good option if you don't have a gigantic hammer with rend. So look for things that buff evil men, particularly plus damage, because in this game, offensive firepower is king. As far as the build goes, we have the full Easterling tree, so 15 points in Easterling, 15 points in Evil Alliance, and 15 points in Iron Guard. This is the exact same tree that Khaldun has. It provides an excellent amount of damage mitigation. And then he goes for the R5 title and the full tree, Master of the War Chariot, Tribal Tactics, which gives evil men follow-up. Like I was saying a few minutes ago, one of the most powerful effects in this game is follow-up. And he has Absolute Leader. This one is different from Khaldun's tree. This says allied units get extra physical damage of plus 10% for each allied evil men unit type present. So you can very obviously see why this guy wants to be running all evil men all the time. If you're running 3 different evil men units, this is a 30% damage increase, which is slightly above average for damage increases in this game. A lot of them sit around 28%. Some of the better ones, like Ring Wraith, do cap out at 30%. And then the ridiculous ones, like Sunin's, goes up to 60%. Those ones are pretty rare. 30% is above average and very solid. He also is putting some points into Golden Visage and Sandstorm. I do believe that if you did not have your Kirun at as high of a respect as Care Bear's Kirun, this is probably where you would cut your points, as the rest of the tree, in my opinion, is pretty much like his core build. You could probably cut a few points from Evil Alliance if you needed to, just because offensive firepower is more valuable than defense, usually like 99% of the time in this game. So you definitely don't want to be cutting Tribal Tactics or Absolute Leader, because that's where a lot of your offensive potential is coming from. And the damage mitigation on Iron Guard, and, well, you have to put the points in Easterling anyway, so you can't really cut those. So if you don't have super high respect, I think you can just drop the extra points out of Golden Visage. As far as army composition goes, pretty straightforward with this guy. All evil men all the time. If you're playing a faction that has evil man T4s like Rune or Angmar, you would almost certainly want to include those in your army. If not, you could replace them, I suppose, with Corsairs, although they're just not nearly as good, in my opinion, as something like Fallen or these War Chariots. The War Chariots are just, like, they're crazy good on Kirun because of his R5 title and because of the synergy with Gigantic Hammer. These guys are large units. If we look at their damage range here, they're gaining a massive 129 extra damage from Care Bear's equipment. Absolutely absurd. They're going from 225 to 300 all the way up to 356 to 431. So you can definitely see there why that is such a powerful item on Kirun as Rune. Another option for your army, if you have them available to you, would be Half Trolls, as these are evil men units and they come out of the box immune to stun, and they take reduced focus damage, which, as the meta of this game has evolved, is becoming a more and more powerful effect, because commanders like Gandalf the White, Galadriel, focus damage Sauron, they're becoming more and more popular, and having the ability to mitigate that type of damage is becoming more necessary to have at your disposal. And if I can circle back to the build just for 1 second before we talk about some purple equipment options, you'll see that Care Bear does not invest into the healing on Kirun, and I think that is a very wise choice. You're going to spend a whole bunch of points in that healing tree for not all that much healing. Plus, you really need a weapon that has some type of extra damage proc, which the Gigantic Hammer with Giant's Power obviously does not have that. It's similar to Gandalf the Grey's healing, where you need extra sources of damage to get extra sources of the healing to proc for you. Overall, the amount of points required, unless you're like absurdly high respect on this guy, just doesn't seem worth it. Perhaps in the early game, for taking some tiles, you can put points into that, and then like once you hit 200 plus tiles or PvP, you can go ahead and respec into a tree more like this. But in general, in my opinion, this is definitely the better build. I've also talked a bunch with a good friend of mine named Ranclast, who is a huge Kirun fan, and I believe that's pretty much the same conclusion that he has come to, and he's used Kirun probably more than anybody that I've ever known, except maybe Care Bear. As far as I know, this is Care Bear's favorite commander as well. So for the point investment, the amount of healing that you get, at least for PvP and like super high-end tiles, isn't particularly worth it. And then finally, to round things out, we'll talk about some purple equipment options. And I don't have these items since I am on a good side account. Actually, you know what? I think I can pull them up in the chest now, can't I? Let's actually take a look at that. I might not be able to because this is still a good side chest. So this is probably something I should have checked on before this point in the video, but oh well. Some of them I can. So the first purple item would be an Easterling Spear with Bane of Cavalry. I can't show you guys that here, but if you're an evil account, you can pull it up in the chest and take a look at it. Then for the chest option, you'd want to be looking at something like a Superior Halberd. You could look for the Shroud or potentially Fire Protection, Melee Vigor. Any of those should be good. Fire Protection in particular if you're fighting evil factions. Melee Vigor or Shroud, I would actually kind of side with Melee Vigor because there are so many sources of pursuit these days because of Gil-galad, but either of those would be fine as well. And you'll probably want something like a Brutal Helm, also with Melee Vigor. And for the equipment slot, I can't show you this one either. It would be a Bone Talisman with Evil Men Strength. That's the extra damage for Evil Men units. I don't have it in my chest because it is an evil-only item. I will say, though, that after talking with Care Bear, he basically said that you probably don't want to be using Kirun if you can't invest the gold gear into him, as his army just doesn't really have the punch that it needs in purple equipment. But if you absolutely want to run him anyways, and you can't deck him out in full gold gear, those would be the gear options for you as far as purple gear goes. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.